With everything new that's came from the Disney-era Star Wars brand, it can get really confusing to place where each new Star Wars project fits in the timeline. When does the Star Wars Andor series take place? Where does the Kenobi series, The Mandalorian, and the Book of Boba Fett fit in the established Star Wars lore compared to Return of the Jedi? And let's not forget the ongoing project of the High Republic, with a series in production titled The Acolyte. Then, there are all the newer Star Wars comics, the novels, and the list goes on and on. But for this video, I'll stick to all these series and movies alone. That includes live action and animated. So sit back, relax, and let's piece together a coherent and understandable Star Wars timeline. Whether you love Star Wars as much as I do, or you're just a casual fan with an interest in the greatest franchise ever created, then you've come to the right place, because Star Wars is all I talk about, and I upload new content, well, whenever I can, really. You won't find Marvel, Lord of the Rings, or Game of the Thrones here. Sorry, this is only about Star Wars. So go on and hit that subscribe button and join us for our deep discussions. Now, on with the show. Star Wars has been in my life since 1977. I've seen every movie and series on opening day, and you wouldn't think that's a lot, but looking back on how much has been released in the Star Wars universe, it's a lot, especially in the past 10 years, since Disney bought the franchise from George Lucas. Now, even I can mess up when it comes to where all these Star Wars stories fit in. But I'm not going to bore you with technical terms such as BBY or the Battle of Yavin, which took place at the end of A New Hope, even though that is seen as the 0-point mark for Star Wars dating. Instead, I'll just make it relative to different Star Wars projects you may know. I'm not going to go into the Old Republic timeline just yet. Sorry, I'm not excluding it because I don't like it, but simply because no animated series nor live-action series has been released for it. Nor do we know if there are any in development currently. I'll include the Old Republic with the expanded material when I make that video. Okay, whenever I get time to make that video, that is. But enough beating around the bush, let's get started. Let's start with the High Republic era, or the Acolyte more specifically. I'm including this because there is a series in development, and this will give you a heads up of where it fits in when it airs. The Acolyte takes place roughly 100 years before the events of Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Little is known about it, but it's rumored to be a dark side of the Force type of story about Sith during that time. Like I said, rumored. There still isn't a release date for the Acolyte just yet, but it is said to be late 2023 to early 2024. Okay, next on the timeline is the Phantom Menace, or Episode 1. I'm pretty sure we all know this is the start of the Skywalker saga, beginning with Anakin Skywalker as a child. This prequel film encapsulates Obi-Wan Kenobi in his youth, his master Qui-Gon Jinn, and the first views of Darth Maul and little Anakin Skywalker. Attack of the Clones is 10 years after The Phantom Menace, or Episode 2, now with the young adult version of Anakin Skywalker and his master, Obi-Wan Kenobi. We get an in-canon story as to where Boba Fett came from and the spark of the Clone Wars. We also get to see some more of how Palpatine came to power. At this time, he was simply Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Also, Jar Jar Binks' role was cut significantly. For the first of the animated series, we have Clone Wars 2003, animated by Genndy Tartakovsky for Cartoon Network. These short animations aren't considered canon, but a lot of people hold them dear. Who am I to take that away from them? Clone Wars, not to be mistaken by The Clone Wars in 2008, shows the beginning days of the Clone Wars as Anakin Skywalker is still the Padawan of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Next up in the timeline is The Clone Wars. It began with a movie in 2008 and takes place between Attack of the Clones and leads up to Revenge of the Sith. This animated movie sparked a 7-season series and shows Anakin Skywalker as a full-fledged Jedi Knight, not Master. But he is now the Master to Padawan Ahsoka Tano in her first introduction of the character. She has slowly become a fan favorite. Come on, who didn't think she was annoying at first? Really, I know I did. Alright, Revenge of the Sith is up next, or Episode 3. This is the conclusion to both the Clone Wars, the Republic as we know it in the Star Wars prequels, the Jedi Order, and the whole prequel trilogy. This is the moment everyone was waiting for. Anakin Skywalker becoming Darth Vader, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda going into hiding, and Chancellor Palpatine making the switch to Emperor Palpatine. The Clone Wars are over, and the Galactic Civil War is about to begin. Okay, up next in the Star Wars timeline is another animated series in the form of The Bad Batch, which follows. It begins at the end of the Clone Wars with Order 66 being executed. This team of misfit enhanced clones struggle to make sense of the changing galaxy along with their clone sister, Omega. It shows the destruction of the cloning facility and the beginning of the switch from clone troopers to stormtroopers as the Empire is in its infancy. Alright, 9 years after the fall of the Jedi Order and the rise of the Empire comes Solo, a Star Wars story. This is the prequel to the character of Han Solo and his introduction to the mighty Chewbacca. We can see elements of the rebellion rising as Han Solo leaves a destitute life to become a smuggler, which we all know leads to the captain of the Millennium Falcon joining the rebellion and becoming a great general and war hero. Alright, around the same time as Solo, a Star Wars story, we get the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Obi-Wan turned Ben Kenobi is in hiding on Tatooine as he watches over young Luke Skywalker, but uncontrollable events make him come out of hiding to face his past as he learns that his old friend and Padawan, Anakin Skywalker, lived in the persona of the Sith Lord Darth Vader. Relearning how to tap into his former Force abilities was no easy task, but we see the broken former Jedi regain his confidence and realize he is still of use to the galaxy, even though the Jedi Order is gone. The next animation takes us away from the main characters, aside from a few cameos, and introduces us to Ezra Bridger and Kanan Jarrus, once Caleb Doom, a Jedi Padawan now adult and hiding but resisting the Empire all the same. This takes place around 14 years after the fall of the Republic in Revenge of the Sith. There are some really good arcs in here involving Mandalorians, and I'll get to that later. Around the same timeline is the Star Wars Andor series. This prequel to Rogue One hasn't finished yet, and I don't want to spoil anything. I will just say it's a much more grown-up story to the Star Wars timeline than we are used to seeing. Slated for 24 episodes, this series has only released 9 of those episodes at the time of this video releasing. Following Andor in the Star Wars timeline is Rogue One, a Star Wars story. This film tells the tale of a small band of heroic rebels risking everything to get the plans to the newly discovered Death Star to the larger Rebel Alliance. It shows a bit of the inner workings of the rebellion and how everything wasn't as we thought it was in the beginning. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, takes place 19 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith. Then we have the one that started it all. 19 years after the fall of the Republic and the Jedi Order, we get introduced to Luke Skywalker in A New Hope, or Episode 4, a young moisture farmer on Tatooine who can think of nothing other than joining the Imperial Academy and leaving the desert rock he lives on. Wait, didn't he flip-flop and join the rebellion? Okay, 3 years later, we get the fan favorite, The Empire Strikes Back. This 1980 film continues the story of Luke Skywalker and his friends as they run and hide from the Empire, as Darth Vader searches for... Okay, I won't spoil it. There's a famous plot twist, though. Yeah, I'm that careful in this video. Oh well, just go watch it. It's the second movie in the Star Wars original trilogy, or Episode 5. 1 year later in the timeline is Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. This is the final film in the original trilogy and shows Luke Skywalker coming into his own as a Jedi Knight as the rebellion gains ground on the Empire. He is aware of Darth Vader's secret and confronts who the Sith once was. This concludes 23 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith. Next up in the timeline is The Mandalorian, heralded as the bright future of the Disney Star Wars era by many fans. Even though Star Wars Rebels was very well received, this series, now preparing to air its 3rd season in February, has brought in new fans and brought older fans back into the Star Wars franchise. It tells the tale of a lone Mandalorian bounty hunter finding his way in a galaxy that has turned on his kind. A tough guy becoming a caring father and uniting with a greater good to bring back the way of his people. This series begins 5 years after the fall of the Empire in Return of the Jedi. During the same timeline in Star Wars of The Mandalorian comes the highly anticipated and controversial Book of Boba Fett. the most famous bounty hunter in the galaxy, and now Boba Fett has returned to polarize the Star Wars fandom. Trying to give up his ways of being a lone bounty hunter, he's tired of being almost killed for stupid crime lords. Jabba the Hutt is gone, and Boba Fett wants to make his way as the new crime lord of Tatooine. But a nice one. The Book of Boba Fett also takes place 5 years after Return of the Jedi. Now I'm going to include another series that hasn't released as of this video being made, the Ahsoka Tano series. This series will take place in tandem with The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. The story hasn't been released yet, but we are sure to see other fan favorites in this show, such as Sabine Wren, Ezra Bridger, and Grand Admiral Thrawn. Yes, Thrawn. Finally, a live-action version of my favorite literary Star Wars character turned animation in the Star Wars Rebels series. Also, the Ahsoka series will take place around 5 years after Return of the Jedi. Starting to see a pattern? I'll get to that near the end of the video. Also around 5 years after the events of Return of the Jedi will be another series that hasn't released as of the filming of this video, Skeleton Crew, starring Jude Law. Not much is known about this series or its storyline, as Disney and Lucasfilm are good about not leaking anything. But Jude Law is a top-notch actor. There are high hopes on this end of the computer for this series, with it taking place around the same timeline of The Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, and the Ahsoka Tano series. Are you seeing a pattern yet? I said that before. Keep it in the back of your mind for a bit longer. Next in the Star Wars timeline is the little-known animated series Resistance. This is a more child-friendly tale of a hotshot pilot 34 years after Return of the Jedi. There are suspicions of a new villainous rise known as the First Order, and this idiot, Kazuto Xiono, has been recruited to keep an eye out for them on a pilot's outpost. Not much to see there. In the same timeline, 34 years after Return of the Jedi, comes the beginning of a new trilogy. Again, highly anticipated, but highly polarizing to the fandom. This film comes with the title Episode 7, The Force Awakens, where we are introduced to Rey, an abandoned young lady looking to get on a quarter portion of food each day. She teams up with a former stormtrooper named Finn to join the resistance against the First Order. Then comes everyone's favorite Star Wars movie ever, Episode 8, The Last Jedi. The second of the Star Wars sequel trilogy, this film alone divided an already divided fandom even further. Taking place directly following The Force Awakens, Rey has found Luke Skywalker and the Resistance is nearly wiped out. Kylo Ren is in a bad mood again, and Supreme Leader Snoke is tired of his whining. A true Skywalker. And last but not least comes Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. The battle to end the war against the First Order, the war to end all wars. Kylo Ren is now the leader of the First Order, and Rey is almost a full Jedi. This film is only 1 year after The Last Jedi, or 35 years after Return of the Jedi. Okay, that's the Star Wars timeline as we know it, but there are rumors of Star Wars projects that will fill in somewhere in this. There's the still-to-be-confirmed Rian Johnson trilogy. Yeah, don't hide it. You're all excited for it. There's another rumor of a film slated for 2025, and some other rumors of series and movies beyond that. The Star Wars is for sure going to get confusing for those with troubles remembering their own kids' birthdays. But remember, when I said there seems to be a pattern around the time of The Mandalorian, this has been dubbed as the Mandoverse, where multiple stories and series will make up a larger story. It's an interesting concept, but not one beginning with Star Wars. Other franchises have done it with success. Let's see if the creators at Lucasfilm can pull it off. Well, that's all I have for now. I'll try to do another video incorporating video games, comics, and novels into the timeline. But for now, if you're only into the film and television media, this is the order in which everything happens in the Star Wars universe. The order in which you want to watch it, well, that's for another time. This is Gerald from Star Wars Fanatics signing off, wishing you all great health, happiness, and peace. Thank you all for watching, and remember, this is the way, the only way.